And then when that is done, I mean, multinational corporations, NGOs, all these sort of, religious movements and so on become normative institutions outside of the state borders. So it becomes more and more difficult for states to control what is happening. And then you have another phenomenon which started to exist, is that public opinion, which is now sort of molded by the internet, by global television and so on, public opinion starts judging states by comparison to their own state, by comparison to what other people are doing. Like, the Soviet Union suddenly realized, people in the Soviet Union suddenly realized that, Americans were richer than what their own leaders were saying. So you have authorities that sort of emerge and that say, we are independent from state, but we are there to cast a moral judgment on state. The International Criminal Court, let alone NGOs and so on. You have other normative authorities and authorities that are producing certain goods that are completely outside of the state realm. The European Central Bank. I mean, today people are saying, the euro is, and so on. But the euro has done a very good job for the last 10 years. And it's much better than what any individual currency could have done by itself. And in a way, the European Central Bank, because it is owned by 16 different banks, 16 different states, can play one against the other. It is a lot more independent than any central bank in one country. And the big advantage, I know that conservatives in this country say, we don't want to abandon the imperial pound sterling and so on, because it is part of what we are, who we are, and so on. That's exactly what I was saying about the sacredness of the state. The pound sterling becomes something that people are emotionally attached to, because it is the imperial past of the country and so on. But in reality, what we want is to detach all these symbols, all these sort of markers of the state in order to move to another sort of era. I think I'm sort of rambling away, and it's time probably to give a conclusion. Well, I'll stop here. I think I've said enough. So.
Thank you very much indeed, Christian.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or contributions? Bob?
If it were quite so bad as the first part of your talk made it out to be, that we were locked into some kind of the ideology that almost produces society with the ruling class, that all parts accept the ideology. One part has more motive to push it perhaps, but they all have the same motive, since they think it's correct or impossible to live well without it. You seem to be suggesting that other states, perhaps because they're more productive, although they're using they're still suffering from the same ideology, will somehow will act as a kind of wedge or lever to make the system collapse. It could go to saying, as the EU wants to do, I don't think it will succeed, that we'll stop the differences showing up, embarrassing us by having everything the same. So it'll be equally bad everywhere, but no one will realise that it could be better, that it is bad. No, I think that won't happen, but your original part seems to suggest that if we are all locked into state ideologies, then what's the other states aren't to be a way out?
Yeah, I think the way out is not necessarily the comparison with other states. It was when you had two different ideologies, like the Soviet Union and the West. But the way out, again, looking at Marxist analysis, is technology. And it is the development of these transnational networks and so on, which undermines the power of the state. The state today cannot solve a lot of the problems, from pandemics to the environment to terrorism to innovation, unemployment, crisis, and so on, without all by itself. And we vote for these leaders we vote for governments, and we make promises and platforms and things like that. But they cannot control much. If China decides to do this, or the United States, or France, or Germany, this country has to follow. And the sort of elbow room that it has becomes smaller and smaller. Even America, even all countries are. So you have the hyperactive French president, Sarkozy, when the crisis hit him 2 years ago, said, I have to summon the G20. So he said, well, hang on, man. We voted for you. You are president. You say you can solve every problem. And now, when we have a crisis, you say, I can't do anything. I have to summon the G20. 20 leaders have to get together in order to solve a problem. So what's the point of any one leader? Yes.
Yes, well, isn't that a little bit of a contradiction? Because I think the ruling class, the political class, has at the moment the strategy to monopolize power on a bigger scale, so that they can then, as one government, react, and that there is no second government where people can move to. I think it's still very important that we have a lot of different political systems, so that people are much more free to move quickly between these systems, and that's what keeps the competition alive and it takes the power away from the government. And you seem to suggest that somehow it's only technology, and this competition is not really important anymore.
No, I don't think the competition, actually the competition is simply legitimizing states. That is what a minarchist would say. Let's go back to small states, but it's not abolishing states. So I think that what we are moving to is probably non-state sort of solutions, and not necessarily smaller states. Smaller states could do even less than our national states are doing today. I think it is true that the ruling classes are uniting. It's another, ruling classes of the world unite. And that's what they are trying to do. In other words, they are doing exactly what the automobile industry or the steel industry and so on, the shipyards did in the 50s and 60s, merging in order to keep a captive market and in order to lower their transaction costs. But it's not working. It's not working because the problems of managing bigger entities, and we are seeing this with the European Union, perfect example. The problems of managing these larger entities become simply unsurmountable. On the other hand, if you have something like Interpol, or if you have something like the European Central Bank, it is not a super state, because its remit, its brief, is very limited. Interpol goes after criminals. The European Central Bank is there to supply a certain quantity of money to a number, to a territory, but actually not to a territory, to everybody who wants to buy euros. You can be in Borneo, you can be in Brazil, you can buy euros. You couldn't buy rubles, but you can buy euros. So what this remit is doing is giving you a service which is a competitive service, because you can buy dollars, you can buy yens, and so on, and not creating a super state. Whereas the European Union, which is trying to hijack the European Central Bank, I accept that, but the European Union has in its brief, in its remit, to become a supra-government, a supranational government. So I'm all in favor of sort of transborder organizations like Interpol, like the International Criminal Court, like the European Central Bank and so on, not in favor of super state. And I think it is the transnational organization with a very limited purpose that are going to triumph, and not the supranational national state.